Brethren, we are excited to be back again as we continue to dive more into Master Craftsman philosophy. We're about to begin the vengeance section, if you will. We'll be looking at section 4, I believe it is, and we're excited to jump into that. And that's going to be quizzes 10, 11, 12, and 13, which coincide to the 9th, 10th, 11th, and I believe they put the 12th in this. Yep, 12th degree in this section. So we're going to dig into those here pretty quick. We're excited to do it. Again, a couple reminders. If you're participating in the Master Craftsman program, please note that we are going to be proceeding through this material, at least in the recording sense, 1 degree at a time. Additionally, keep in mind that if you're participating in the St. Louis group, you need to read the material before listening to each one of these lectures. So keep that in mind. We're about to dig in. First up will be the 9th degree, elect of the 9. So, brethren, we're breaking now into the 4th section, and tonight, or today, or this afternoon, whatever time it may be, we're going to dig into the Elu of the 9, or Elu of the 9, depending upon your pronunciation. So we'll jump right in. I think you'll enjoy it. A couple of these sections are a little briefer. Some are a little bit longer, but definitely good content no matter how you look at it as we dig in. So Elo of the 9, very interesting degree to me from a historical perspective as well as a symbolic perspective, an understanding of symbolism. Of course, traditionally the 9th and 10th degrees are kind of slammed together. That's really the easiest way to put it. They're commingled in their presentation through the revised standard pike work, which makes it hard to tell where one ends and one begins. Personal opinion here, I don't exactly care for that. I understand the idea and the metric of it, but I don't really care for it. These were meant to be 2 separate individual degrees with their own individual purposes that build upon each other, but you lose some of that individual beauty when they're made in one union. These degrees together in their heart explain how the Tyrians are captured and brought to justice in their allegory, but they're different parts of that story. They're different parts of that story. In the 9th degree, we're talking about a shepherd approaching a cave out in the wilderness. He sees a gentleman at the edge of the cave, a fellow craft, a workman of some form, and this fellow craft is lamenting his life and how terrible it is and how guilty he feels and all these terrible bad things. And inevitably, the shepherd returns. He reports this information to individuals who he think might value it. And of course, who he reports to are some craftsmen who are looking for those Tyrians, those criminals who assaulted the Grand Master. And inevitably, the rest of the degree addresses how that individual Tyrian is brought to justice, how he's pursued at that point where the cave is, and the result that follows. The 10th degree kind of picks that story up and continues it with the fate of the other 2 individuals involved in the crime and how they are brought to justice. Generally speaking, when we're talking about duties with this degree, Bridge to Light and other material informs us the ideas of this degree, and the duties are education, enlightenment, patriotism. They impart the need and the importance of an upper and a lower house or legislator. And A Bridge to Light tells us the masonry moves like a star, dispensing light and knowledge and tolerance, which is symbolized by the star on the flap. Now, it is worth noting in the regalia of this degree, the regalia has changed in recent time. Part of that perhaps is this idea of not spooking the profane, and thus the severed head and some of the things that used to be on this apron and on the cordons have been replaced with different symbols, roses, or in this case of this apron for this degree, a candle in darkness and a star. Very interesting symbolism in the original connotations. I think something is definitely lost in the new variants. But it is what it is, and if it's sought to be fit, so be it as the council directs. From a general perspective, of course, many of these degrees have some relationship to governmental practice. Again, kind of keeping these two paired. The ninth degree is the upper house of wiser elder members who serve for longer terms. The 10th degree is, of course, about a larger number of Elu, and they represent the lower house, who are numerous. They reflect, of course, being a more populous branch with fickle and shifting winds, per se. So, keeping that in mind. Now, we're told that this degree originally was created to reward fidelity, obedience, and devotion. And this degree was consecrated to bravery, devotedness, patriotism. And our obligations make known to us our duties. They are summed up in the simple mandate that we are to protect the oppressed against the oppressor and devote ourselves to honor in the interest of our country. Of course, we're told very clearly in the ritual that, as well as in our lecture, that Masonry is not speculative nor theoretical, but experimental. It's not sentimental, but practical. It requires us to make an effort. And we talk about that, how it wars against passions that spring from our bosom, how it labors to better us. And the fact that the idea of sentiments and passions and things like that that come into the world, we're told that there may be a world of Masonic sentiment and yet a world of little or no Masonry. In many minds, there is a vague or general sentiment of Masonic charity, generosity, or disinterestedness, but no practical, attractive virtue, nor habitual kindness, self-sacrifice, or liberality. Masonry plays about them like a cold, though brilliant light. And he talks about this idea of what sentiments are and passions. And he talks about these people who, for them, Masonry takes its chance in general and inefficient sentiment, and it's mournfully barren of results and words and formulas and fine professions. Most men have sentiments, but not principles. The former are temporary sensations. The latter are permanent and controlling the impressions of goodness and virtue. The former are general and involuntary and do not rise to the character of virtue. Everyone feels sentiments, is kind of where he's going. They flash up spontaneously in every heart. The latter, though, when he's talking about principles, are rules of action and shape and control our conduct. And it is in these that Masonry insists upon. Of course, we're told that as Masons, there is an understanding within this idea of sentiments and principles and things. And we're told that, maybe we approve the right, but pursue the wrong. It's one of the oldest stories of human deficiency. No one is going to abet or praise injustice or oppression or slander. Yet how many of us will condemn these things and yet be guilty of them in some manner? It's a rare thing for him whose indignation is kindled at the tale of wicked injustice, base slander, etc., and then who stands up against it. We're, of course, told that here in the lodge, virtue and vice are matters of reflection and feeling only. There is little opportunity here for the practice of either. And Masons yield to the argument here with faculty and readiness, because nothing is to follow. It's easy, it's safe here. Pike talks about this idea that, Masons will stand up for ideas and virtues and things and against vices within a lodge because there's no recourse. It's within the room. It's safe. It's okay. We can feel warm and fuzzy, but who's actually going to go out and actualize it? Men may be really, in certain ways, interested in Masonry while fatally deficient in the virtues. It is not always hypocrisy. Men pray up most fervently and sincerely, and yet they're constantly guilty of acts so bad and base, so ungenerous, that the crimes that crowd the dockets of the court are scarcely worse. A man may be a good sort of man in general, and a very bad man in particular, good in the lodge, and bad in every way in the world. Many a man earnestly desires to be a good Mason. He says so and is sincere, but if you require him to resist a certain passion, to sacrifice a certain indulgence, to control his appetite at a particular feast, or to keep his tempers in a dispute, you will find that he does not wish to be good, or to be a good Mason in that particular case, or wishing he is not able to resist those impulses. Pike's talking here about this idea of continuing kind of in line with the sentiments and principles, but this idea of our own actions, our own responsibility, and the importance that there are good men out there, but they still may not be a fit. They could be good in public, bad in private. They may be upstanding in every way until you look into their matters, business and family, or elsewise. Good while they're in town, bad when they go out of town. Plenty of different examples he gives here, but it's worth noting this idea that we have to find those who are going to exemplify our virtues, grow in those virtues, and practice the principles of the fraternity. Of course, realizing that helps us to realize the importance that our duty is always with us, and we have that duty. They are consistent. They are always there. And Masonry is action. It's not inertness. It requires the initiates to work actively and earnestly for the benefit of their brethren, their country, and their mankind. Of course, industry is never going to be unfruitful. It brings not joy with incoming profit. It will yet banish mischief from thy busy gates. And we're talking here about this idea of duty. We're talking about this idea of work and labor and the importance of it. And we're told that an intelligent people who is informed of its rights will soon understand its power, and they cannot long be impressed. But if there be not a population who's sound, who's virtuous, then society will just kind of fall to its own weight. It is never safe for a nation to kind of relax or repose itself in the lapse of ignorance. The improvement of the masses of the people, which we as Masons are dedicated to, and as we advance, we learn this more and more, is the grand security for popular liberty, in the neglect of which the politeness, refinedness, the knowledge that has all been accumulated by those other classes will someday perish like dry grass in a hot fire of popular fury. And that's a pretty clean sentiment and clean statement that gets to a lot of things. This idea that we as Masons need to labor, we need to educate, we need to make effort so that the population is not ignorant, is not rude of the world, if you will, and put them on a foundation that they have knowledge of what proper government is, what proper liberty is, and all the understandings that come with it. That's part of our role, part of our duty. It is not the mission, of course, of Masonry to engage in plots or conspiracies against the civil government. It is not a fanatical propagandist of any creed, nor does it proclaim itself the enemy of kings. It is, of course, as we say, through multiple degrees, the apostle of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But it is no more the high priest of republicanism than of a constitutional monarchy. It contrasts no entangling alliances with other sects of theorists, dreamers, or philosophers. It does not know those as initiates who shall assail the civil order and all its lawful authority, while depriving others of their consideration and religious rights. It sits apart from all sects and all creeds in its own calm and simple dignity, the same under every government. So Pike here is reiterating the fact that Masonry stands as this apostle of these ideas of liberty, equality, and government, but it's not going to produce a plot or conspiracy or fervor in fanaticism against the government or conspiracy theories or anything like that. And the fact that it is not just the banner carrier of liberty or republicanism, because in the same boat it would support a constitutional monarchy. He talks about that and he reiterates it. He says that, Masonry recognizes as a truth and necessity, as well as the abstract right and the ideal justice, must have a play in making of laws, the administration of fair and the regulation of relations into society. It sees that necessary rules in all the affairs of man, and it knows that where any man or number of men comes together, there perhaps is the imbecile of intellect, so degraded, so incapable of self-control, and so inferior in the scale of humanity as to be unfit to entrust it with progatory ability or skill of citizenship. The great law of necessity. For the peace and safety of the community and the country requires them to remain in control of their larger intellect and spirit wisdom. So here, Pike is reiterating the importance of finding individuals who are knowledgeable, who are understanding, who are capable, not those who are devoid of those faculties, and thus unfit to rule. Now, of course, that would lead us to this idea that Masonry teaches that all power is delegated for the good and not for the injury of the people. Remember, we talked about Masonry being the apostle of liberty, equality, and fraternity. When it is perverted from its original purpose, the compact is broken and the right ought to be resumed. That resistance to power usurped is not merely a duty which man owes to himself or to his neighbor, but a duty which he owes to God in asserting and maintaining the rank in which he gave him in creation. So Pike here is talking, of course, about this idea that we should have enlightened leaders. We should have knowledgeable leaders. We should be espousing liberty, equality, fraternity. Yet, when we delegate all that power for good and not for the injury of the people, we're doing something right. But if it's perverted from its original purpose, then our compact of behavior is broken. And that right can't be resumed to them. That power can't go back to them. Our resistance is not only our duty then, which we owe to ourselves and our neighbor, but to the divine, to God, to carry that forward. And we're reiterated here, of course, that the well-informed Mason is not going to fail in his practice of being a votive of liberty and justice. He's going to be ready to exert himself in its defense wherever it exists. It cannot be a matter of indifference to him when it is his own liberty or other men with whose merits and capacities he's acquainted and they're involved in the struggle to be made. His attainment will be to the cause, for the cause of man, and not merely the country. Wherever there is a people under the value of political justice and is prepared to assert it, that is his country. Wherever he can most contribute to the fusion of these principles and the real happiness of mankind, that is his country. Nor does he desire for any country other than to benefit from that justice. So here Pike is specifically talking about the fact that as Masons, we are votives, we are adherents to the ideas of liberty and justice, and we need to be willing to give of ourselves and exert our energies in its defense. And no matter where it exists, that's very clearly said here, no matter where it exists. And in doing so, it's not only for us, it's not only for our country, but it could be for other places wherein liberty is needed, wherein liberty needs to shine. Of course, this idea of service, this idea of devotion both to liberty and your country or elsewhere, tinges into things like patriotism and honor. And we're told that the true Mason identifies the honor of his country with his own. Nothing more conduces to the beauty and glory of one's country than the preservation against all enemies of its civil and religious liberty. The world will never willingly let die the names of those patriots who in their different ages have received upon their own breasts the blows aimed by insolent enemies at the bosom of their country. And we talk a little bit about this idea of patriotism and service for your countrymen and for their liberty and their betterment. But we're also told not often is a country at war, nor can everyone be allowed the privilege of offering his heart to the enemy's bullets. But in these patriotic labors of peace, in preventing, remedying, and reforming evil, oppression, wrong, cruelty, and outrage, every Mason can unite, and everyone can effect something and share in the glory of the result. And there Pike is reiterating this fact that war obviously is going to come, and it may not come all the time or in excess, yet even if we don't have the ability to fight in the battle itself, in the actual conflict, there will be other conflicts, other opportunities wherein we'll need to serve in fighting other forms which rage against liberty, equality, and fraternity. And he here, of course, talks about things like oppression, cruelty, outrage, reforming evils, all these things that are not just on the battlefield, they're going to be right in front of us. Right in front of us. And that's definitely something worth considering. Of course, we end this degree with a simple injunction, but a meaningful injunction in the lecture, just as with some of the others. Forget not, therefore, to what you have devoted yourself. Defend weakness against strength, the friendlessness against the great, the oppressed against the oppressor. Be ever vigilant and watchful in the interest and honor of your country. May the great architect of the universe give you strength and wisdom, which shall enable you to well and faithfully perform these high duties. Keeping that in mind, we are charged again in this degree to move forward to exemplify the lessons of the Elu of the 9. And of course, we're combating the Tyrians in the 9th and 10th degree, these Tyrians which reference and represent so many things that hold us back in the world, so many things that hold us back in our existence as men, as Masons, that we have to overcome to become better men, to approach the lessons of the 14th degree, the 18th, the 30th, etc. We have to come armed and ready, and we have to overcome those Tyrians as best we can while they're lurking in the background, and then they pop up here in the 9th and 10th, and we tackle them. So with that, thank you for joining us for the Master Craftsman Study Group. We appreciate you being here. Join us next time as we explore the 10th degree, Elu of the 15, or Elu of the 15, however you want to call it, or illustrious elect of the 15. See you later.